So I see so many tourists here in Odessa during summer, so many foreign guys. Actually, the genesis for this Tip Thursday came from actually hanging out at Beats Club, a really cool party for Solomon. And I just looked around at all of these guys. Basically, the ratio in the club was probably like 3-to-1 guys to girls. And I just thought, most of these guys are tourists. I mean, they have almost no chance. They're not going to be czars here. They're not going to live like kings. They are just going to have the tourist experience. So, welcome to another Tip Thursday with me, Connor Klein. This is the Czar Experience, and in today's video, as you guessed from the title, I'm going to outline why you should live the Czar Experience and avoid being a tourist when you come here to Ukraine, because yeah, it's just not the same thing. I kind of feel sad at times looking at them. So, I'm going to be outlining this. Let's jump into it. Поехали. So one of the biggest differences between the experience of a tourist who's not very well informed about the city, its culture and its people, and a czar, quite literally, just someone who's bloody expert, knows what the hell he's doing here, is their relationship with beautiful women in the city, and how many tourists leave here disappointed, empty-handed, because they come here with all these preconceptions about Ukrainian women, especially in a city like Odessa, which is a big tourist mecca during the summer. And they just naively think that being a foreigner, having a foreign passport and having relatively more money than the average Ukrainian is going to make them absolutely a big shot here in a city like Odessa. And that's absolutely not the case. Once you understand the culture and how to interact with women, with beautiful women here in Ukraine, you will know why that is, and why that is obviously just a fantasy. I have a complete video dedicated to this topic. I'm going to link it up in a card and down below in the description. But in summary, I like to illustrate it more with an anecdote. At the beginning of summer, I was hanging out I was actually staying, it was hosted by Red Line Club, which is a beach club in Arcadia, a very touristic area here in Odessa. And there was a group of German guys who came every morning for breakfast around the same time as me. They were, late 20s, early 30s, I would say. Pretty good looking on average, most of them I would say above average in terms of looks. After 5 days, I just started chatting to them and say, hey guys, what was your experience like here in Odessa? Because obviously they also had a certain amount of money, because Red Line is not cheap to stay at, so I mentioned that they were also pretty well to do in general. And they told me that with the exception of one of the guys, there was probably 10 of them, except for one of the guys, absolutely none got anywhere with girls. I asked them, why is that? And they said the girls were just not interested in them. That's the first thing about being a czar and not a tourist, is your relationship with beautiful women and how to interact with them, how getting to know the culture and actually understanding the dating culture here, because it is dramatically different. Don't buy into all those falsehoods. They're there just basically to market you dating services online. Beware, beautiful women are not going to be that easy. So there you can see a lot of tourists behind me. We're right beside the beautiful Odessa Opera House, near to sunset. So a lot of people have come here to take a nice Instagram pic, or just to take a photograph for their own memories. Now, one thing that is a problem, particularly for the tourists in this city, is being scammed, especially kind of romance scams. I met a group of German guys here at the beginning of the summer, and one of them, he fell victim of a very classic scam that doesn't just affect this city, also St. Petersburg. It is a very common one in the city center. So listen up. Basically what happens is that he went onto Tinder. Quite a normal, obvious thing to do, but scammers know exactly how tourists are gonna think, because they all do more or less the same thing. They think, okay, I only have a short amount of time here in Odessa, and to maximize my opportunities having a whole holiday romance, or maybe meeting someone more seriously, so I will go on to specific dating sites or apps. So he went on to Tinder. The girl showed up with a girlfriend. First red flag. Then they chose the place to go to. It was a beach club here in Odessa. Second red flag. You are paying the bill. You should be choosing the location. So he went to the club, the beach club. They ordered 2 bottles of wine. I'm not sure how long they stayed to have gone through 2 bottles of wine. Pretty quick. And then they said, oh, actually we have to go. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Paka paka. The bill arrives. It's 1,000 euros. Not exactly what he expected for almost a speed date. So it's clear that there is some sort of agreement between girls like this and whatever establishment it is, you know, a club, a bar, a restaurant. One of the big issues is that tourists, they're predictable. They're always going to do the same thing. They're going to congregate in the same place, like here outside the Opera House. And that leaves you very, very open and vulnerable, if you're not streetwise at least, to being targeted by scammers. So they know exactly where to find you, unfortunately. And that's something that my clients do not always have to worry about, because when they come here, I prep them accordingly, and I can actually vet their interactions and their correspondence and say, hey, you don't want to meet this girl. She's coming with a friend. She's trying to suggest a restaurant. Ditch her. I hope you don't fall victim to a scam. Definitely need to be streetwise in this area if you're hoping to meet a local princess and seduce her. This guy behind me is Taras Shevchenko. Now you probably don't know who he is, but he is the national poet of Ukraine and wrote in the Ukrainian language. And that's this 4th point about being a czar, that is language. Now I know that the official language of Ukraine is of course Ukrainian, but in reality, in the big cities that you are going to visit, most people will use Russian in daily life. I'm not a fob, as you might be able to say in America, fresh off boat. And that actually, I think, is probably the strongest value, the biggest value I actually get from speaking Russian here is basically no scammers, but apply basically. Number 2, I would say, of course, if you meet a girl and she does not speak really passable English, then it is effectively a waste of your time trying to communicate with her. It's not going to happen. You're not going to build any sort of rapport. And if you speak at least, you know, low intermediate Russian, that should be enough in order to continue with that relationship and build on that. Moving on to the 3rd advantage I think it gives me is it makes me more unique. I think speaking Russian is kind of probably about how would I say, intermediate in terms of effect on that. Like, a lot of foreigners do come here and learn Russian. It doesn't make you that unique, but it definitely separates you from 95% of the kind of week-long tourists. And I would say the 4th advantage actually goes to what's going to be a future later point in this video, which is just mentality. And you know, if you have to go and learn a foreign language, then no matter what it is, you also have to enter that culture and understand its people, the native speakers who use it a lot more in order to communicate effectively. And you're forced to put yourself in their position and see the world from their point of view, and that is very educative in terms of when you actually arrive in the country afterwards, because you're going to have a better idea about how the society works. So be a czar, not a tourist, and at least speak a little bit of the language. So I encourage you to do that as a big language learning enthusiast. So another huge mistake that I see tourists make here in Ukraine, in particular in Odessa during the summer, is that they go where all the other guys go. They go to Arcadia, to all the most obvious clubs, which are basically like Wurstfeste, Sausage Fest, or Penis Parada, if you want to use the German term, which I always love. And that's one of the big things, is that guys are predictable and they will go to the same places. Now the problem with that is, of course, that the girls, the beautiful girls that you're going to hang out with, if you know what you're doing, are not going to be there in any sort of significant numbers in those clubs that attract a lot of tourist guys. What the kind of girls, to be blunt, that it's going to attract are not the girls that you really want to meet. It's going to be, you know, gold diggers, hookers, or girls that are just not very pretty, who would basically love to be in an environment where it's 90% guys and that they are obviously the only girls that anyone's going to hit on there. So fair play to them. I understand why they would do that, but that's not what you want if you come to Odessa. I know that you want to meet the most beautiful women that you can, and some of the most beautiful women in the world are here in Odessa, Mama, but they're not going to be at the party scene where the tourists are. Of course not. They're going to be at the better places, and if you're a czar, you'll know where those are. And finally, reason number 5 why you should be a czar and not a tourist is your long-term knowledge and integration into Ukraine. Because if you come here as a tourist, you're gonna have a very superficial experience of the country. You're gonna have very superficial interactions with Ukrainians. You're not gonna really understand the history, the culture, the direction the country is going, and that's gonna make your attachment to the country very weak and short-lived, and you're not gonna want in all probability to actually come back here afterwards, because you just had a tourist experience and something that you can replicate, of course, in lots of other countries without really investing very much into knowing anything about the country. And that's something that I really help my clients with. Understanding, not prep them before they come, understanding the modern culture, the history. We don't have to go into ancient history, but just so they understand the context in which the country is at, its people, and they get a greater appreciation for the country and its culture. And that's something that they take away from their experience here, and something I encourage you obviously to do. Even if you are coming as a tourist, please try to learn something about Ukraine before you come. But that's inevitably what tourists do. They will just walk around some landmarks and take photos, and it could be anywhere. It could be Budapest, it could be Prague, it could be Kiev. It's all the same. Yes, baby, you too can live the czar experience instead of a tourist trap, but it's not for everybody. So if you are a delusional elderly wife hunter here in Ukraine, thinking you're gonna pick up a 20-year-old Instagram model, they're all gonna be waiting here because they're so desperate to leave for your elderly ass, then this is not the experience, and there are lots of dubious marriage agents, dating sites will gladly entertain that fantasy for you and take your money. Similarly, if you are a sex tourist, do not even write me. But if you are the kind of person who wants to come here to Ukraine, to a city like Odessa during the summer, you want to party hard, you want to meet beautiful women, you want to just have an unforgettable experience and learn a shitload of lifelong skills, all during your stay here in a city like Odessa. It can be Kiev, it can be, of course, Lviv, or another city in Ukraine. Then you need to write me. You can do that by email at connorklein@czarexperience.com, or you can slide into my DMs. My handle there is Czar Experience. I'm going to send you a questionnaire. Once you reply to that and fill it out, and let me know more about yourself, and I think that we are a good fit to work together, then we're going to jump on a short strategy call and see if we can make it happen. If that's the case, could be you here living this czar experience with me. Can be in Odessa, can be somewhere else. It can actually be in another country like Russia or Belarus as well. But you need to take that first step. You need to write me, and it can be you next weekend. The sun is setting here in Odessa, so do svidaniya, do pobачення. See you very, very soon in the next video.
Czar Experience.